helping people cope with and overcome life's challenges. This is Life Transformations with Michael Hart, certified Christian counselor and director of Ottawa's Elim Counselling Services.
Hi, this is Michael Hart of Elim Counselling Services, and I want to thank you once more for tuning in to this edition of the Life Transformation Radio Show. This is a radio show where chains are broken and the lives are literally transformed. So if you're listening to us today and you're going through any issue in your life, I would like you to stay tuned because we'll be talking about many practical things that can be helpful to you. And we discuss a different topic every week. And this week we'll be discussing dealing with toxic family members. But before we go into that, I want to tell you a little bit more about Elim. If you're not familiar with us, we can be found on the web at elimcounselingministry.com. That's Elim, E-L-I-M as in man, counseling with 2 L's, ministry.com. We can also be reached by phone at 613-699-1677. And those of you who are savvy with the internet and you're into social media, you can tweet us. We also have a Twitter page where you can read interesting quotes, and you can also connect with us on our Facebook. You can access the Twitter and the Facebook page by going to our website. There are links that take you to these other pages. So today, as I said before, we'll be discussing dealing with toxic family members. And I know some of you have turned up your radios a little louder because you probably are dealing with a family member that you realize it's very difficult to get along with. And so you're very interested in finding out more about what we'll be talking about in this show about dealing with toxic family members. As usual, with me in studio is Melissa Waggott, and Melissa is here today to help me explore this topic. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, Michael. It's good to be back. So I think this topic is very timely. I know we have snow falling today. We're starting to get close to the Christmas season, and many of us will be starting these big family gatherings, whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. And as you said earlier, many people often have the experiences of having some toxic people as members of their family. So for the purposes of the show, do you mind just starting the listeners off with describing what you mean by a toxic family member?
Toxic family members are those members of your family where when you're around them, regardless of how good a mood you're in, when you're around them, you leave there feeling as if you're feeling bad about yourself, feeling as if your day has been ruined. They always manage to say something to make you feel guilty or to make you feel as if you're doing something wrong. They're always highly critical, or maybe they are not critical, but just the very conversations that they choose to talk about at a family gathering creates a lot of stress for everyone else. And then there are the eyes rolling, people looking at each other across the table, touching each other with their feet underneath the table, because everyone is feeling this sense of being uncomfortable. So those toxic persons can really put a damper on your holiday celebration. And so many people going into the Christmas season already begin to have this feeling of dread.
Mm-hmm. Because it's coming again.
It's coming again. We are going to have to get together again with this person. Maybe it's a brother, maybe it's an uncle, maybe it's a mother or father, parent, or some sibling that you are dreading meeting with over this Christmas holiday. So stay tuned. We'll be talking about some very helpful things today.
Mm-hmm. So what are some signs, you alluded to a little bit in describing what a toxic family member is, but what are some signs that you're actually surrounded by a toxic person? That person sitting across from you at Christmas dinner is the toxic person. What are some signs?
Some of the signs are what you begin to feel within your body. There begin to be a tenseness. When you're around a toxic person, you're not as comfortable. You may enter the room feeling very comfortable and very relaxed. But once you're around that toxic person, you can already begin to feel that those tension begin to build in your body. So that's one of the signs. Another sign is your thought patterns. Your thought patterns will begin to change once you're around a toxic person. And the reason for that is that when we have a bad experience, it is stored in the emotional center of our brain called the amygdala. And when we are around a situation that is similar to the last situation, those memories, those feelings are being triggered because you're around that person. So the insult that you felt the last time you're around that person, the sense of blame, the sense of guilt, all of those emotions are beginning to be triggered just because of the fact that you know that you're either going to be around that person or you're around that person literally.
So as our listeners, I think, have come to know from our show, we really try to base all our topics in the Bible, whether it be for advice or examples we can draw from and learn from. And you were able to find a story, I believe it's in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 6 to 8, that describes a situation that involves a topic or a toxic family member. Can you describe the story a little bit and read the passage for the listeners?
Yes, this is a story about Elkanah and his wives, and one of his wives' name was Hannah. And I'll just read from verse 6, and it reads as follows. And because the Lord had closed her womb, that is Hannah's womb, her rival, which is the other wife, kept provoking her in order to irritate her. This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. Elkanah, her husband, would say to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? So we have a family situation here with Hannah, Elkanah, her husband, and the other woman in the family, where whenever Hannah was around that person, she went into a very downcast mood because of things that would be said to her about her barrenness. So maybe in a family situation, it's not necessarily identical to this, but things are said about your cooking. Things are said about how you arrange your house. Things are said about how you discipline your children. Things are said about maybe how you dress yourself. And just being in that family gathering with this person creates that stress because you know that there is likely to be something said that is going to be hurtful to you.
And you can see how frustrating that would be and how you, over time, wouldn't want to be around those people. And you've actually been able to describe in some of your Kingdom Life workshops 5 common toxic types of people that can be found in family gatherings. And some of them I think are kind of funny, but I think they're a very good example. And I'm sure our listeners out here may have family members that they'll start to identify in these 5 categories. So off the top, do you mind describing, I think you have it down here as the crisis king, and what that toxic type looks like?
Okay, the crisis king is the kind of family member where they're constantly on an emotional roller coaster. They're always, they can't keep their life together, and they always seem to be in a crisis. Like every time that you meet with them, there is something going wrong. There is some kind of high drama that is taking place in this person's life. And so when you get together for this family gathering, that person becomes the center of attention because they're always talking about their crisis, and they distract from the happiness and from the fun that people that could be that the other family members could be having, because it becomes about their story. It becomes about the crisis in that person's life, and they become the center of attention. So the crisis king is one of the first kind of family member where it's very common, where families dread having these gatherings because they know that there's going to be some drama in the life of this person.
And for these crisis people, do they have a hard time recognizing other people's crises as well? Like if someone actually is coming to the gathering with an actual problem, do they have a hard time saying, oh, I see your problem, because really it's all about them?
Yes, I think they're people like these, they're very self-centered and very, very focused on themselves. So for most people, they would realize that it's not appropriate, or this is not the best place to be talking about the suffering that they're going through, because it's spoiling a fun occasion. Or most people in that kind of a setting, they would maybe find one person and talk to that person privately. But the person who is the crisis king, as I describe it in my workshops, this person likes to be the center of attention. So it's not just in private with one person who they seek as a confidant. They're making sure that everyone shares in their misery, because they want to be the center of attention.
The next toxic type you've described is the super spiritual family member, and how sometimes they can be a little bit of a wet blanket on family gatherings, because they're those people that just can't have fun. And the example you've given, I think, in your workshops is that person that can't play Monopoly because it's too worldly. And I've heard of people too that can't play Go Fish because it has cards, and cards are related to gambling.
Yes.
So can you go into a little bit more detail about what that super spiritual person is like and why they're so difficult to have?
Or they give one more example. They can't play dice games because dice were used in the crucifixion of Christ. The soldiers,
that's a new one. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, the soldiers threw dice, and so therefore there's some kind of evil around any kind of games where you throw a dice. So so these people are super spiritual, and they tend to see everything as being wrong. Things that would be fun to most other persons are seen as being evil. And so when you're around this person, you're always second guessing yourself, because you're thinking, is this going to be appropriate? Am I dressing my kids? Are my kids going to be dressed in a way that when grandma comes over, she's not going to think like they're some demons from hell? Mm-hmm. Or, is there anything that I've put up in my house that she's going to think is demonic? And so with people who are this kind of super spiritual people, they create a lot of tension in family settings, because they're always judging others as to whether or not they're living according to their version of how they should be living. So if you're just joining us, you're listening to the Life Transformation Radio Show, and I'm your host, Michael Hart, and with me in studio today is Melissa Waggott, and we're discussing here, our radio show today is about dealing with toxic family members. So we are talking about 5 different kinds of family members that are common in families, and that you see around gatherings such as Christmas gathering and gatherings for Easter and so forth, and they create a lot of tension for the rest of the family. So the first one we talked about was the crisis king, and the second that we talked about was the conflict creator.
Mm-hmm. And now we're up to, I think, our third toxic type, and that's the put down pro. And to help illustrate this, I came up with a little bit of an example that may describe this. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I should preface this by saying this is not a true life example for me, mm-hmm. but it's something that I think may highlight what a put down pro is.
Right.
So let's just say, hypothetically,
yes.
we're going to Christmas dinner, and I'm hosting it at my house.
Right.
And my mom-in-law comes over,
mm-hmm.
whom I love dearly,
mm-hmm.
But she starts subtly putting me down. I'm not making the gravy right. She would have done it different, or the turkey's not brown enough. You should have done it this way. How is this sort of what a put down pro would be like?
Absolutely. This put down pro is always pointing to things that make you feel as if you're doing something wrong, right? Or you're not living up to standard, or make you feel ashamed of yourself. So in the story that we read in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verses 6 to 8, we find that the other woman in Elkanah's house was a put down pro, because whenever Hannah was around this person, she would be very sad and downcast. The Bible told us in those verses that she wept and that she was sad, to the point where Elkanah, her husband, had to try to be comforting her. So there are some daughters-in-laws, and that example that you give is a very good example, and one that I commonly see in my counseling practice, where there are wives who dread their mother-in-law coming over because they're going to be made to feel again that they're cutting the vegetables wrong, or that they're doing something that is not quite living up to standard.
Yeah, I have friends of mine that when certain people are coming over, the stress they feel to get everything just so, and in spite of that, it never seems to be good enough. So do you have any suggestions on how we should handle those situations sometimes when we're faced with the put-down pro? Do you call them on their behavior? Do you point out how it's actually okay the way I'm making my turkey? What suggestions would you give to people? Because you can see from the example, even biblically, how infuriating it is.
Yes.
And how damaging it can be to us emotionally when these things keep coming up over and over and over again.
Absolutely. So I think one of the mistakes that are commonly made when when people find themselves in that situation is that they don't do anything about it, and they let the frustration build and build year after year. Like with Anna, the story tells us that in Hannah's situation, she was provoked about her barrenness for years, and no action was taken by Elkanah or by Anna to try to prevent the other wife from being such a thorn in her flesh. So the mistake is made where people allow this to continue. And then what sometimes happens in families is that there is usually a situation where one year it's as if the cup runs over and there is this big blow up, and then
I'm picturing the turkey flying across the room.
Absolutely. Or someone storms out and go off to a hotel because they just couldn't take it anymore, and then the whole gathering is spoiled. So I think that's a very big mistake to make, to let it go unchecked for years. The second mistake that is commonly made is that people try to deal with it in the heat of the moment. Like someone says something about the turkey, and you said, this is the year I'm going to talk to mom. If she brings it up to my mother-in-law, if she brings it up, I'm going to say to her this time that don't you dare criticize my turkey. Right?
I'm just thinking of it's true, because we do sometimes have those pre-game conversations, exactly as you say, where if they say that to me this year, it's not happening.
Yes.
So you're priming yourself emotionally for a fight.
You're priming yourself for a fight, and then that sometimes backfire, because even with the best of intention to deal with it in the way that you have scripted, because you're in the heat of the moment, it comes out wrong, things goes out of control, and a gathering that should be happy for everyone turns out into being a disaster. Okay, so I think a better way to deal with that situation is to deal with it before it happens. If you realize that this is a problem that has been reoccurring for years, what I would suggest is that you set aside a time to talk to your mother-in-law before this situation comes up. Before the gathering, and to say, we love having you over. It's a pleasure having you here, and I know you're well-intentioned, but I feel very criticized every time that you say something about my cooking, and I would like you to desist from doing that. I know you're well-intentioned, but I think there is nothing wrong with the way that I am doing it, and I'm going to ask you not to say anything about it this year because it makes me uncomfortable. So if you're having that kind of talk one-on-one, even if you become a little bit emotional, it is not throwing a big damper on the whole gathering. And chances are that your mother-in-law, whoever it is, will come into the situation thinking about what you have said and may desist from that behavior. So I know some of you listening to me out there now is saying, this will never work with my mother-in-law. I can just see her going into a fit, and I could just see her starting accusing me of being too sensitive. And this is, some of what I've heard in counseling. But let me say that if it turns out that way, then you have information that you can now work with.
Mm-hmm. And by information, what do you mean?
Well, you can say to yourself, well, I know I've tried this approach and it doesn't work. So I now have to come up with a a plan B as to how I'm going to deal with this situation. What kind of boundaries am I going to establish in my family system to make sure that I am not constantly being made unhappy at a family gathering. So boundaries may mean something like, as harsh as it might sound, not having the person over at these big family gathering, or finding ways in which the person is not involved in the kitchen with you. That could be another boundaries, right? Or you might have to solicit the help of your husband in speaking to his mother-in-law in order to make sure that this doesn't happen. And I think maybe this should probably be one of the first steps to it, is that the husband should be directly involved if it is his mother who is at the heart of this contention.
And as you say, being self-sacrificial and just letting everything go is not a wise choice. So we've gone through 3 of the 5 types so far. The next one that comes up is the conflict creator. Can you describe who that person is?
There's one of those in my family, but I won't call it. This
is counseling for Michael and Melissa today.
I don't want to offend anyone, but the conflict creator is the person who will. It's like they like to set things on fire and then watch it burn.
Okay.
Right? So if things are peaceful and everything is going very well and everything is calm, suddenly they would make a remark that would set 2 people at odds against each other. Something to the effect, it could be, it is so good that we are here. We are here this Christmas, but so and so always said that we should have it more often. We should have other family gatherings throughout the year, and that this is not enough. Or so and so didn't like the turkey last year. So and so suggested that we should have ham instead, or something to some kind of remark that is making people feel that what they're doing is not good enough, and that other people are being implicated in that statement. So it's not just that person is going to be at conflict with someone else, but they're creating conflict in the room between other people. Or they will they will try to set one daughter-in-law against the other, for example, by saying something like, you're at your family gathering and you have just done your turkey that you think it's the best turkey in the world that you have ever done, and then this person will say something like, the turkey that I had last year at my other daughter-in-law's house was so wonderful. It was so great. It was just so well done. And so this now sets up a kind of feeling between the 2 daughter-in-laws, where you're feeling that, so my turkey is not as good as her turkey. And, so they will make little comments like those to create animosity between people. And if you're not careful, you get drawn into it. And then there is this feelings that can go on for years, and uncomfortableness between other people.
So if you're sitting at the table and you're starting to see this play out, what should you do if you see this person starting to stir up some trouble?
Well, I think it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes these people can become well known for what they're capable of, and if the people who are involved in the situation doesn't take it personally and know that this is how the person, let's say that the 2 daughter-in-laws know that this person, their mother-in-law, is a conflict creator, then if they're okay with that and they know, okay, that's just how she is, we don't take it personally, we're not going to fight each other, it's just her trying to stir a situation, that's, you can just look at it as being, this is how the person is. However, if it is creating animosity between people in the group, it is going to be necessary again for there to be a talk with that person, not in the heat of the moment, but outside of, preferably before the next gathering, where they can meet and say, when you made that comment at the table at the last Christmas dinner, it was very uncomfortable for everyone. And we would like to have you here, but we can't have you here, year after year if this kind of thing is going to come up gathering. It's just not healthy because it's creating tension. So you might need to confront that situation again with the person outside of the gathering, not at the table, because it creates too much stress. So if you have just joined us, you're listening to the Life Transformation Radio Show. I'm your host, Michael Hart of Elim Counselling Services. Elim can be found on the web at elimcounselingministry.com. ELIM counseling with 2 L's ministry.com. Our number is 613-699-1677. And with me in studio today is Melissa Waggott, and we have been talking about, today's show is about dealing with toxic family members. So if you have missed the first part of the show, or most of the show, because we only have about 3 minutes left and we are going to have to start winding it down here, we have talked about different types of toxic persons that you will find at family gathering and how you can deal with situations that arise at these gatherings. You can listen to the podcast of the show at our website at elimcounselingministry.com, or you can also listen to the show on the CHRI website by clicking on the Life Transformation link.
So we have one toxic family member type left.
Yes.
So with the time we have left, can you quickly go through what the gossiper is, or who the gossiper is?
Okay, as the name suggests, the gossiper is the kind of person who likes to share bad news about other family members. And there might be family members who are not at the gathering, or even at the gathering behind the person's back. This person will be going around and making it uncomfortable to everyone by sharing the latest bad news about for example, about the impending breakup of this couple, or the gossip about their fears their fear that someone supposedly had, or the financial trouble that someone else is into. And this person usually makes people very uncomfortable and creates a level of stress in at the gatherings, because they're constantly bringing up bad news about other people. Now, sometimes there might be other people who like to hear these kind of gossips, right? And they just like to be around this person. So it's not a source of stress for some people who like to hear those kind of things. However, be sure that if this person is gossiping all the time about others, they are going to be gossiping about you as well, and will be saying things behind your back about what's going on in your relationship and what they think is happening, what they have heard, and casting all kind of shadow on what is going on. Melissa, there are so many things we have to discuss about this show. I think maybe we'll probably need to have a part 2 where we're going to
save everyone's Christmas dinners and give you all tips how to deal with these people.
Absolutely. So I see my producer is giving me a signal here that we need to wrap up, as we only have 1 minute left. So I want to thank you all for joining us today on the Life Transformation Radio Show. And Melissa, I want to thank you for being with us again today and for helping us discuss this very important topic.
You're welcome.
And I think there are many of you out there who are thinking that this is very timely, because you are dreading the next gathering dealing with toxic family members. So I think we have a few other things that we could talk about, and we may contemplate doing this as talking about the rest of these things in the next show. We'll have a discussion about that, and we'll let you know if there's going to be a part 2 to this show. Thank you very much for listening to the Life Transformation Radio Show. This is your host, Michael Hart from Elim Counselling Services. Elim, ELIM, counseling with 2 L's, ministry.com, 613-699-1677. And until next time, I pray that God would bless you in all your relationships and keep you sound in mind and pure in heart. God bless you until next time.